Hey, I got some questions recently on the Mappy fspy add-on, and I thought it was a good opportunity to go ahead and add some tips and tricks for doing this workflow. There's not a whole lot to the add-on that it improves, but it just saves you a whole lot of time, and the add-on and the workflow is pretty fun. So if you're not aware of fspy, go to fspy.io and download your version and load up an image. And when you load up that image, I'll show you one that we worked with here. You need to set your axes and give it as long and as distinct of points or of reference that you can. So to set this rounded corner would be very difficult because it's not very crisp. But this edge here, you can see how it has more of a line to it, and that's going to be easier to find. So the longer the lines you can find, the better. And then also, if they need to be a little far apart in order for it to find the points with any accuracy. And then you can see here also that I use these crisp lines for the x-axis as opposed to the rounded ones as well. I probably could have chose the top of this window line or this bottom edge as well before it rounds. But either way, those are my tips on fspy. Just in how you pick your guiding lines. So it does pretty good on bringing things in, and you know, I'll show you what I got here. We'll hide everything. Oop. I'll hide my blocks. So here you can see that all it did is bring in the it brought in the image as a reference, right? And we've got the camera. The camera is the primary thing that we're trying to that we're using as a reference because it's setting that camera based on your reference. So it's going to put it in 3D space according to where the camera would be that took this picture. And then you need to model all of your objects that are going to be used from this reference. So bring back my objects. You can see I've modeled these front two buildings as well as those cross buildings. So I've got a few tips here to share with you in order to get decent results in using this. One is that you want them to make sense somewhat. So when you are first modeling something, it's easy to model something and then end up with something that looks okay according to the reference, but then when you go into 3D space here, it doesn't make any sense. So that might be things like these little walkways not being even or something, or them having weird dimensions. And that's because a single point of perspective that you're getting from the camera is never going to be good enough for knowing exactly how these go. So you need to come out and create your geometry in ways that make sense. It took me a couple times in order to realize that this building was actually in front of these crosswalks. I'll show you real quick. Oops, did it again. Right, so you can see that the crosswalk is going behind this building that's in front. So when I was messing with the geometry, I had to make sure that it was in front and those crossed behind. All right, and there's a few other things that were clues that you have to intuitively figure out from the image. Another one was that I knew that these two crosswalks were going to be directly vertical from each other. So one stacked on top of the other. So there was a number of things that I did that when I modeled it, if I had one and then I duplicated it and hit Z and came down, it was really far off. It like didn't make any sense. It was not matching. And that was my clue that something was off. I used the wrong axis, right? So as an example, I can scale this on Z and it be the same size, or if it's scaled on Y, I can make it reach those borders. But there's only one that's correct. So let me back stuff out. There's only one that's correct, and one of the ways to figure it out are these things like the clues on taking that object and moving it where you think it should match and adjusting it until it does. Once you get your objects that you think are close, you're just going to make sure you're in the look dev mode and you hit map fspy image to all selected. When you do that, it's going to, the time that it saves you is just adding the mapping and modifiers and the projection stuff to each of the objects selected instead of you having to do it. It doesn't add anything to like fspy or anything. The plugin to bring in fspy project is already great. It's just repeating the process of it, especially helpful when you have multiple objects that you want to get from it. So a few things to note here. One is you can do some live manipulation of the objects, and it's going to stay projected. Right? So that can sometimes help. Another is these overlaps are from the texture, and that's because all I have for the object is what's inside the picture. So in order to get these areas to look any better, you're going to need to do some other textures or UV mappings for those faces where it doesn't meet where it doesn't intersect into the picture. Well, obviously the objects extend outside of the frame of the picture, so it would make sense to model it like that. And one of the gotchas in here that made me think I might need to update some defaults is the automatic modifiers that I'm adding for subdivision. If we have these set to 1, like they are by default, they're going to miss some details. And it seems like about the level of 3 is where it gets right. So you can see another one here. We have it set to 1. And this is because this is one big box. And it doesn't have a lot of geometry to work with and help do the UV mapping to. But if I do the subdivision of 3, you can see it gets a lot better. And if I keep going, it doesn't help much. Even 3 might not be enough. It all depends on the geometry that you have. Let me see. Can we make that show? It depends on the geometry that you have, and if you're going to need to make some more loop cuts or subdivisions or whatever. I would recommend that you come in and you go ahead and do loop cuts before you do the subdivision. So do real loop cuts for geometry points. So on this one, well, let's see, let's go ahead and edit this one, Control R. All right. So on this one, having it on either side of this window, probably makes sense. All right. And it doesn't change anything at all when it comes to the process. We'll come back over to here. It's going to add a little geometry when it comes to the subdivision, but when you add the loop cuts in, it will reduce how much subdivision you need, and it'll make sure that you have the geometry approximately where you need it. And you're going to want those faces in your model anyways, just to be able to like switch this out for glass in this case or something. So that's just a little extra tip. If you look at fspy tutorials, they're going to go over that as well. One more thing to note: if you have access to multiple angles of the same subject, you can load both into fspy, and when you run mappy, it will help make some decisions on which images to project to what faces of your objects, which could save you a lot of time, especially depending on how many faces you've got to project to. Obviously, you don't always have multiple angles to work with and bring into fspy, but if you can do that, then it will help with some of these things. When you switch between cameras, it'll help with some of the single perspective issues, and it will also help you map in these unseen areas and remove some of the distortion from outside the frame. That's all I've got for today. If you have any issues with this add-on or any other add-on, go ahead and send it to me, and I'm happy to work through it. It helps me improve what I'm building, and gives me ideas on how to improve things in general. So till next time, bye.